Hi, welcome back. So Sensah Groupsets, they're awesome, they're cheap, they're light, and that's about it. But which one gives you the best value for money? Or bang for your buck, you could say. Now in terms of how these actually perform out on the road, I don't know, because I don't own any of these. Why? Because I'm not some billionaire who has money to spare. Anyways, starting with the cheapest Sensah Groupset, and that is the R7. 7 meaning 7-speed. Unfortunately, Sensah doesn't make shifters and derailleurs for the R7, so I won't be using the R7 in this comparison. Though it is worth noting that the R7 shifters are compatible with Shimano's 7-speed. Moving on to the 8-speed Sensah, and we have the Sensah Reflex coming in at 778 grams for the shifters and derailleurs, and it costs $77 US. For the 9-speed Sensah, we have the Sensah Ignite. The Sensah Ignite comes in at also 778 grams and also costs $78 US, which if you notice is almost exactly the same as the 2x8 Sensah Reflex. For 10-speed though, we actually have two group sets, which is weird. We have the Sensah Phi and the Sensah Quantum. The Phi comes in at a chunky 815 grams and costs $94 US for the shifters and derailleurs. Meanwhile, the Quantum only have shifters. So yeah, I think this is because the Quantum is supposed to be a cheap replacement for the Shimano R4700 Tiagra, as they very proudly say it is compatible. But in terms of weight and cost, it costs $79 for the shifters and weighs 500 grams compared to the Phi, which is also 10-speed, weighing 484 grams for the shifters and costing $71. So the Quantum is not only heavier than the Phi, but also costs more. However, we do have to consider the fact that the Quantum is built specifically to be compatible with Shimano Tiagra. Moving on to the 11-speed group sets, and we actually have two group sets. The ever so famous, or infamous, Sensah Empire, which comes in both aluminum and carbon form, and the Sensah Team Pro. The Sensah Empire weighs 740 grams and costs around $110 US for the shifters and derailleurs, while the carbon version weighs 727 grams and costs $172 US for the shifters and derailleurs, so it's over 1.5 times the original cost. For the Team Pro though, just like the Sensah Quantum, it is meant to be compatible with Shimano. In this case, 11-speed Shimano 105 and Ultegra, allegedly at least. It weighs 476 grams and costs $76 US for the shifters. For comparison, the Shimano 105 R7000 shifters weighs 515 grams and costs $166 US for the shifters, on AliExpress that is. So the Team Pro not only costs less, but also weighs less. There's also a carbon version which costs $120 US, but I can't seem to find its weight. Moving on to 12-speed, and we have the top of the range Sensah Empire Pro, which comes in at 711 grams and costs $196 US. So it's nearly double the price of Sensah Empire while only weighing like 30 grams less. So now that we know what these group sets cost and weigh, let's determine which is the best value for money. Now in order to determine that, we have to see multiple factors, as I previously mentioned, price and weight. But we also have to consider stuff like shifting, durability, and maintenance costs. I also won't be including the Quantum and Team Pro as they are just shifters. For shifting quality, I'll base it off Shimano's hierarchy and assume that it's kind of a plateau curve. So roughly we can assume that the 8-speed Sensah Reflex has a shifting quality of around 6 out of 10, and for the Empire Pro, it's 10 out of 10. If you're wondering why the Reflex and Ignite get the same score, it's because I think both of them are practically identical, as they have the same cost and weight. Next up, durability. Now, as with Shimano, durability and just general quality of the components increase while going up the hierarchy, hence I'll be doing the same. If you're wondering why the Sensah Empire gets 1 out of 10, it's due to the broken shifter. Now of course they fixed the problem, but there are still old versions circulating the market. Also, Empire Pro receives an 8 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10 as it's made out of carbon, and as we all know, if you have a crash, carbon is just gonna... Also, if you've seen this video from Trace Velo, For the shifting, there isn't any padding and it's direct carbon on metal contact, which will wear out the carbon in the long run. On to my favorite part, and that is maintenance costs. So obviously the cheaper group sets are going to be cheaper, but how much cheaper though? So in the whole drivetrain, other than the crankset as it is negligible, we also have the chain and the cassette. Now for the chain, I'll be using KMC chains. For the 8-speed, I'll be using the 8-speed KMC chain, which costs $20 US. 9-speed though costs $25 US, 10-speed costs $32 US, 11-speed costs $37 US, and last but not least, $40 US for 12-speed. And for the cassette, it is $12 for 8-speed, $13 for 9-speed, $16 for 10-speed, $22 for 11-speed, and $38 for 12-speed. So if we combine both the costs of the chain and the cassette, we get $32 for 8-speed, $38 for 9-speed, $48 for 10-speed, $59 for 11-speed, and $78 for 12-speed, giving the 8-speed a 10 out of 10 for maintenance costs, all the way down to a 2 out of 10 for 12-speed. So with price, weight, shifting, durability, and maintenance costs all added up, we can determine which group set gives you the best value for money, and it is the 8-speed Reflex. Ta-da! You might notice that the cheaper group sets fare better, and that is of course due to them pulling an advantage in the cost categories, but also because they don't suffer all too much in the weight and shifting quality categories. If we compare the prices of the Reflex to the Empire Pro, the Empire Pro costs well over twice the price of the Reflex. Hence, the Reflex, being the cheapest, instantly receives a 10 out of 10, while the Empire Pro receives a 3 out of 10. Arguably, I should have marked it down even more, but whatever. And when we get into shifting, the Empire Pro gets an obviously instant 10 out of 10, being the best group set, but if you ever tried a lower tier group set, the difference isn't all too massive. Obviously, there's a difference, but it's not like groundbreaking, to me at least. Hence, the Reflex only receives a 6 out of 10. Also, the Empire fared worse in this comparison due to the shifter failing, but let's say if you did get the new version and the shifter wouldn't fail, how would the results change? Well, so it's actually not too bad. It still loses, but not by much. It's tied with the 10-speed. Anyways, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I know it's not the best comparison video in the world because I don't have the actual group sets, so I don't know how they actually perform in the real world. Because my comparison is just like how they fare on paper, you know, compared to each other. In terms of the real world conditions though, you have to consider stuff like stiffness, you know, when you're sprinting out the hood or when you're climbing out the hoods, you have to consider stiffness, and you have to also consider comfort, you know. Unless I'm wrong, most of them, like if you just look at them, like pictures of them, they all look the same. And also it will be cheaper for them to be the same, you know, the design. So yeah, I don't really know. If you have enjoyed this video, leave a like and a subscribe. It really helps the channel, and as always, I will see you guys next time. Good night everybody.